guys, so at the suggestion of my good friend Paleo, I have elected to do this video comparing the Gothic language with the Old English language, and for this purpose I am using a fragment of attested Gothic and Old English. The Old English version is these are both versions of the verse Luke 18:21-26 from the Christian Bible, and the Old English version is the West Saxon Gospels, and of course the Gothic is sort of Wilfilian translation of the Bible. So we're just going to do a little surface level analysis, see what obvious differences and similarities we can point out between the Gothic and the English of these passages. So I'm going to read out the Gothic for you now so you can get a feel of what it's like, and forgive me if I make some mistakes, I'm sure I will. So, gahausjands þata, Iesus warþ imma, noch ainis wan ist, all that he habais frabugei gadailei unledaim, habais huzd in himina, hiri laistjan mich, if is gahausjands þata gaurs warþ auch gabeigs filu, gasaihvands inna Iesus gaurana waurþanana, hvaiwa agluba faihu habandans inngaleiþand in gudis. Rathis o alis ist ulvando nethos lithan, tho gabigama in gudis galithan. So that's the Gothic, and now the Old English reads: Vakwath sahaland, anthing is wana, sille that du hafst, and sille that therefrom, dan hafst du goldhorn an helfene, and come and folga me. He das woord heerde, he werd ungered, for them he was sweet the wely. Se helen hine un rotne jeseach, he quath. Ella, who erford liedje on God's riche gath, de veil havath. Li kormai se olfen gaan, durch andere nadele ere, dan se wellige on God's riche. So that's how both of them sound like. And we can notice some immediate differences in how the two of them tell this story. So essentially the Gothic uses more inflections to communicate the information, and the Old English is more analytic in its approach. So as an example, this present participle ending in ans, so gahausjands here, that is used quite commonly in Gothic, and although it exists in Old English, it's used much more rarely, and they're more likely to put it in the form of an active verb. So in the middle here is a really good example. So if is gahausjands þata, so that is literally sort of when he hearing that, and the Old English says he das word je heerde, which is when he that word heard. So it's using an active verb to construct it rather than a participle. We can also see generally that the word order in the Old English is more predictable than the Gothic is. What else do we have? A very interesting difference in syntax is that the Old English uses the definite article se before Halland, which is the word for Jesus, and notice also they use a title Halland for Jesus rather than Jesus' name itself. And actually this is a rather unique thing with Old English in that they have a very large range of different titles and epithets for Jesus, especially when used in poetry, whereas Latin has, unless it's like a specific attribute that's being referred to, like, I don't know, Salvator or something, there's really only a handful in Latin of words to describe Jesus, whereas Old English uses all sorts of titles. Gothic does not use so many various titles as Old English does to describe Jesus. It sticks more closely to the Greek in that regard, and sticking more closely to the Greek is the main reason given by scholars for why the word order in Gothic is much more analytic. we can see an interesting example of the word order in the Old English being more sort of predictable when Jesus says, "Sell all that thou hast, and sell all that therefrom." Sell all you have and sell it to the poor, or give it to the poor. And the Gothic takes these two verbs and actually puts them directly next to each other, but it means that the word order of these two sentences is not very predictable. So all that you have is frabugei, give away all that you have, gadailei, unledaim, and give it to, and distribute it to the poor. Whereas in Old English the word order is very predictable. We have the verb first. It's a very obvious, simple command. You can feel a difference in sort of style therein. And it's worth noting the case of these two verbs also, sila. And over here we have actually two different words. So in Old English the word to sell, in terms of to give something away and get money in exchange, and the word for giving something away are actually the same. I believe there's sort of chepan later on can also have the same meaning of buying and selling, but the point is that silan means both in Old English, and this gives a rather uniquely English sort of interpretation of this verse in the Bible, whereas the Gothic actually has two different words. However, both of these words are found in Old English also. So frabugei in Gothic here means, well, it sort of means give away, and in Old English we have the word frabugei meaning to sort of bend away from, to fall in front of, to be defeated by. And then we have gadailei here, which sort of means give away, and in Old English we have gadailei, which would be sort of to divide up and to distribute, etc. So we can see that the Gothic here, although not all of the words match up perfectly with the Old English in this particular example, the words probably wouldn't be that unfamiliar to an Old English speaker, especially when we remember that it looks a lot more foreign, a lot more different on the page than it actually does when you're hearing it spoken out loud. We can identify this also, that a lot of the words, it's really just a simple matter of a small phonological change, like quath to quath, really subtle one, þata to that, what is huzd to þatei, habais for hafst, blah blah blah. That is a habais is a noteworthy thing, or is it? No, it's not. I was going to say that it's oblative, but I don't think it is oblative, so we're not going to talk about that. Generally also we can see that Gothic doesn't use the pronouns except after this conjunction, sorry, not conjunctions, except after, I think maybe they are conjunctions or particles like this, like if, is, which typically are something I don't fully understand, but they do something like in the introduce dependent clauses. So is, in this line, if is gahausjands þata, I believe is the only pronoun in this passage, whereas the Gothic has loads more. So inna Iesus, gasaihvands dan inna Iesus gaurana warþanana hvaiwa, þase hallan inna hine rotni yesech he hvaiwa. So we have a nominative pronoun here, he hvaiwa, whereas the Gothic just has hvaiwa. So we can see in these two passages the tendency for Gothic to drop pronouns as well. What else do we have that is of note? Well, I think that might actually be, at least on a surface level, a good comparison of the two. There's a couple of, one last, I suppose, interesting differences. So the word for the kingdom of God, that's a worthwhile point also, and I get pulled up for this all the time. So this last phrase at the bottom, in theorangardiaguris, and then in Old English that's on God is richer. In most Germanic languages, I believe, wait, no, because in modern German it goes afterwards. But certainly in Old English, generally your genitive goes before the noun it governs. So in God's kingdom, like we have in modern English, but in Gothic it's the other way around, and actually genitive should not go before the noun they govern. So in this case it should be in filu guris, like we have there. And the difference between filu and riche is interesting. So theudans is the Gothic word for king, and then guardia is sort of home or place. So we have this sort of etymological understanding of guardia, the word for kingdom, as the sort of home of the king, whereas riche is, if I'm remembering correctly, is related to the word laistjan, meaning sort of to rule or to govern in a place. So essentially the Old English word is only bringing to mind the political governance of it, whereas the Gothic is drawing up this metaphor of the home of a ruler. It's almost sort of democratizing the ruler by making the ruler sort of inhabit a home in the same way that everybody else inhabits a home, and having that be the word for kingdom. And one last point is, if you look closely and spend a lot of time with it, you can probably see way more correspondences than you might otherwise have guessed. So here's an interesting one. So ulvando therkonethlos, for olfend thurch, and then therklo I don't see a correspondence, but ulvendo for olfend, you can see ulvendo for olfend, therch for thurch. So if you were to look, you would see all sorts of correspondences like this between Old English and Gothic, because we have to remember that this Gothic that we have written down was written down probably, from the Codex Argenteus, and it's probably from the mid-5th century, and this Old English one would have been written maybe three and a half centuries later, so only about 350 years afterwards. So there's not actually that much of a sort of temporal gap in terms of Germanic language development between Gothic and Old English. Now, granted, sort of languages develop at different speeds, but if you think about it, we today can read English that was written in the 1600s, mid-1600s, quite comfortably, I think. I mean, Shakespeare is a century earlier than that, and most people today can still read that. But certainly, I think English from the 1600s, people can read without very much problem. So I think perhaps if they're able to hear somebody speaking it, an Old English person might be able to get to grips with what the Gothic Bible was saying, and vice versa. Who knows? So anyway, this has been a comparison of the Gothic Bible and the Old English Bible. I hope you found it enjoyable. Shout out to my friend Paleo, who may be doing a video soon on why he's learning the Gothic language. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!